Hello, one and all. Welcome to another episode of Depot's Den. I am your host, Evan DePasquale. And if any of you are listening that have been following my podcast, if you want to be mad at me for not really posting as much recently, I totally get it. I'll take the heat on this. I don't know why. I've just not been on my I just have been it's been really busy, so totally 100% on me when it comes to, posting uh podcasts. So this is going to be a new like tradition. We're going to make sure that we every Tuesday, cuz now we're getting into football season. Football season is in less than 2 weeks. The Bills will be playing in 13 days. So literally from right around this time, 8 o'clock, when they'll be kicking off against the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. So that'll be super exciting. So my plan is for every Tuesday we'll go over the Bills game, we'll go over the weekend review, and then also at the end of the show I will make my weekly picks on who's going to win what game, and we'll make some I'll keep track of my weekly record, how I've been doing in each game, stuff like that. So I'm super excited. I'm glad that, you can come along for the ride with me. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I just want I want to start off with just the start of Bill's training camp. I think that what we needed to hear, we heard, and that's Stefan Diggs saying basically, oh, there's no beef between us or Josh Allen or Sean McDermott, and him saying 100% I want to retire as a Buffalo Bill. Like that for me brought me the most closure, because that was the one big thing that everybody kept talking about was, oh, Stefan Diggs, he might want out. And whoever Stephen A. Smith says his sources that Stefan Diggs wants out of Buffalo is an idiot. We'll just put that there. He was really stupid of thinking that Stefan Diggs wants out of Buffalo, because where is he going to go? He's not going to go to anywhere else that is remotely good enough, in my personal opinion, that is in the mode where the Bills are right now. I was not able to go out to any training camp practices. I was supposed to go to the Return of the Blue and Red, but had to work, unfortunately. But I think that what we have really seen is just, I think that we're seeing this team be probably even better than they were last year. I still think, besides at middle linebacker, the Bills have the best defense, or excuse me, this is the most depth that the Bills have had probably ever. I can't remember a time where I was like, all right, there's an injury, oh, let's slap this guy in who could be a starter. And I think we even saw that in the final preseason game. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But I do think that the Bills, that's been something that has frustrated me, is that there has been nobody that has taken over middle linebacker, whether that's Terrell Dotson or Terrell Bernard, AJ Klein, but then he was on the cuts for the Bills. So we'll get into that a sec. I was just not happy that nobody has been able to take the job where I feel like they needed to. I feel like they needed to. I was really hoping someone was just going to hold on to that middle linebacker spot, and no one was going to touch him. And it's making me feel like I wish that we had kept Tremaine Edmonds, honestly, because I thought that he was not only super young, but he's super good, and talented. I think going into next off season, I think probably the biggest, need for the Bills is going to be at middle linebacker. Will they spend a first round pick at middle linebacker? Would not be surprised if they did that, unless they see one of the guys that get whoever gets the middle linebacker spot, if they're able to, you know, do great this entire season, we'll definitely look into that. I think that that's really what it's going to come down to, is basically how does it go at middle linebacker? Because everywhere else, I think the Bills are stacked. They're great at safety. You got, obviously Hyde and Poyer coming back, who are phenomenal in their own right. And then you have Taylor Rapp, who was a good starter in and of itself, being basically your number 3 safety. And then Damar Hamlin, who made the roster, which is freaking awesome, is going to be your fourth safety. That's a deep safety group. And I think that that's really, really, really good from what I feel on this Bills team, that they're so just they're I don't feel like there's not many gaping holes besides at middle linebacker. Wide receiver room is deeper than I could have ever imagined. You got Shakir going, not having as much pressure as trying to be the next Cole Beasley, the next slot receiver. And you got Dalton Kincaid with Dawson Knox. I really think that the 2 tight end set is going to be incredible for the Bills this year. I mean, you have Quentin Morris, who will be a really good number 3 tight end, put him in the red zone situations, a blocking tight end, stuff like that. And then, you know, I think the only, real trouble I feel on the offense is at tackle, left and right tackle, because I don't feel like there's like, if God willing, there's an injury, I don't know if there's really anybody great that can step up. But guard, you got Ryan Bates, who can also play center too. I think that is a really great, you know, just hold on to the Bills. And that's what's probably going to keep him on this team is his flexibility. So say if Mitch Morse does get hurt, or, Osiris Torrance is beginning to, look like a rookie, basically, he's giving up pressures, he's giving up sacks or whatever, then you can throw in Ryan Bates in there, to give him some time. But you now, for left guard, you have Connor McGovern, who they spent the most money on in the offseason, and now he went out with an injury. Slide in David Edwards. David Edwards, I believe, in 2021, the year that the Rams won the Super Bowl, he gave up only like 6 sacks or something. He gave up the 6th fewest among all offensive linemen in the NFL. And then, so if McGovern, I know he had a knee injury, don't know the severity of the knee injury. I think that he can end up being really, really good for this Bills team. I think that having Connor McGovern for, obviously he's going to be your starter and is going to be, your number 1 left guard. But if there was an injury and say he had to maybe slide over somewhere, you're not going to have a gaping hole at left guard because David Edwards is going to fill that spot and fill it pretty darn good. So, Dalton Kincaid, I feel like he is what has been advertised from what I've been hearing. Dalton Kincaid, he was doing great at training camp, and they didn't really show him out in preseason, and I honestly think that's a good thing. You know, keep him hidden. I don't need to know too much about Kincaid for them to get a lot of tape on him. He's going to be matched up against linebackers in the slot and safeties, and he's going to destroy them. It is going to be a matchup nightmare for Dalton Kincaid. And I think that it's a really, really good pickup. And I'm glad that the Bills got him. And I think that this is going to make Josh Allen's life so much easier. And another concern that I do have is at backup quarterback. Matt Barkley, I think he was put on season-ending injured reserve because he hurt his elbow in the second preseason game against the Steelers. But I am not really sold on Kyle Allen. I don't know if anybody else is sold on Kyle Allen, but I for sure am not. I am not sold on, how good Kyle Allen could be. I think that maybe I would not be surprised if the Bills tried to trade him or they would cut him because they like someone who just got cut or traded for someone. And Malik Willis was someone that was brought up. He's probably the third string quarterback for the Titans. Tannehill's going to be number one, and Will Levis is going to be your number two, and then eventually your future. So bring in Malik Willis as your backup to learn under Josh Allen. And if, again, God willing, Josh Allen does get hurt, then you have a security blanket where it's basically like just just keep it going. You don't need to like speed through it. Just keep this train moving. And it's almost like I've heard this. It's like this is a nice sports car. Just keep it in first and cruise along. If ever there's a time where, say that Josh Allen does get hurt, hopefully he doesn't. Obviously, I don't want to like bring anything bad into this feeling that, oh, Josh Allen's going to end up getting hurt and is out for the rest of the season. And obviously, basically, the Bills' title run for this season would be over. It was awesome seeing Damar Hamlin back on the field, putting pads back on, getting out there for game action for the first time basically since his cardiac arrest in Cincinnati. Now, I do wonder what that's going to be like for him going into going back to Cincinnati, I think in week 8 or something like that. I don't fact check me on that one. It off the top of my head, but it's like in November, so middle of the season. I think that his performance, especially in that first preseason game, I felt like was going to be on the roster, but seeing how he played in that first preseason game, you were like, okay, this guy's making the roster. There's no doubt about it. And he made stops on third down, even stops on fourth down, making great tackles. It looked like he was not scared anymore. He was not scared to go out there and make a hit. And I think that was super important about this game, was making about, that first preseason game was get that first hit out of the way, and then you're gonna be all right. And I think that's what you really saw basically in that first preseason game. And on that first preseason game, Colts Bills, my takeaways were at that point was I felt like that Matt Barkley had gotten a step over Kyle Allen. And 1 week later, I was wrong because Matt Barkley went out there for the second team and struggled. And, Kyle Allen had a solid performance. But then I was like, who's going to be the backup quarterback? And like I said, I don't think the Bills' backup quarterback is on this roster right now. I just don't think it. So Matt Barkley was placed on season-ending injured reserve, like I mentioned. Kyle Allen right now is your number 2. Could I see him being put on the practice squad or being traded because, you find someone better that got cut? Absolutely. I would not be surprised if they did it. I was concerned a little bit on the offensive line in the Pittsburgh game. But again, it's preseason games. They don't matter. But also at the same time, you want to be, I think preseason is more so to see what the rookies can bring. And I felt like Osiris Torrance had a really great preseason. I felt like that I think he is going to be the Bills' right guard. Now, if people are going to complain about Spencer Brown, and I've heard it. I've heard a lot of people, disappointed with the way that Spencer Brown has been playing. I think for me, not everybody on your offensive line is going to be like a Pro Bowl caliber player. It just isn't. I don't want to say impossible, but very unlikely. How many teams have like an absolutely stacked offensive line? One, the Eagles, who have the best offensive line in football. Dallas, maybe, and they just lost one of their best guards because he signed with the Bills, Connor McGovern. So for me, I just look at it from a standpoint of the offensive line is going to be fine. And I think that what we're seeing from Josh Allen this year is we're seeing him so far throwing the ball. He doesn't need to throw the ball a million yards downfield. Just hit the small targets if you need to. And I think that that's what we're starting to see. And, Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy, Dalton Kincaid, those are the guys that are going to be the guys that are going to be getting the short passes, that are going to get the ball quickly out of Josh's hands. And I think that that's what's going to end up happening is I think that they're going to start incorporating more short game, get yards after the catch, stuff like that. I feel like that there's more speed on this Bills offense than there was in previous years. I will say, like I mentioned, I'm not worried about Connor McGovern's injury. I think that he will be fine. If he's not ready week 1, which I highly doubt, he'll be ready to go. You'll have a solid backup who can step right in David Edwards, and I think we'll be fine. And I think that I will say I was a little surprised to see how many, penalties that the team had. And I will say the thing I was probably most surprised about in this offseason, Kyer Elam not taking that cornerback 2 job. And I'm wondering if the Bills are going to end up trading him because I feel like Dane Jackson is going to be your number 2 corner this year. Your first round pick that you spent a big asset on, a first round pick, has not taken the number 1 spot. Now, do I think that he is bad? Absolutely not. But is it a little bit concerning? Yeah. You spent this entire last off season was about making sure you had a cornerback 2, and obviously Tre'Davious White was going to be hurt. So I'm not too worried. But I am really frustrated that I like Elam a lot. I think maybe because we spent a first round pick on him and I want it to work. But if it doesn't, I think that if you can try and trade for a middle linebacker, I think that that's what I would like, or some draft capital, maybe a second or a third round pick. You're not getting a first for Kyer Elam, unfortunately. So that's sometimes I look at it and say, has Brandon Beane kind of lost his touch in a sense? And I'll get to that in a sec. Maybe because he did have his first round pick last season not take the bull by the horns and get the starting cornerback 2 job opposite of Tre'Davious White. And he actually got beaten out by Christian Benford. But I think that when you look at it, Tre'Davious White, I mean, not Tre'Davious White, oh my goodness. Kyer Elam is more of a man press corner, and Christian Benford and Dane Jackson are more of like a zone guys. And that's what really the Bills like to run. So, all right. Got a couple more things, and then we'll be done for the day. And then also I will be doing an episode on Friday. So since I'm gonna make another episode this week and not do one next Tuesday because there's no football next Tuesday. So what it's gonna be, I want to talk about the legend that a lot of Buffalo sports fans know about. That he just recently passed away this season. So I think that I feel like I should give my due diligence and talk about Rick Jeanneret. because he's the reason why I got into this business. But we'll get that into that on Friday. So when it came down to the roster cuts, um, Von Miller being placed on reserve PUP, physically unable to perform, was not surprised about that. I was not surprised that he was. I don't think he would have been ready for week 1, and if he was, I would have been like, he might not even play, or maybe he'll play like a really small amount of snaps. But again, not surprised that he's put on pup. Um, it sounded like it was going towards he was going to be ready week 1, but I think that what the Bills are trying to do here is just to play it safe, let him, get the time he needs. But the thing that sucks about Pup is that he can't practice with the team until after 4 games. It's not 4 weeks, 4 games. So it is frustrating. Um, from the cuts that I saw, I was surprised that they cut Ike Butker because I thought that Ike Butker was a really depth offensive lineman that I felt like maybe they could have kept around. Um, we see Reed Ferguson was released. Don't be too worried about it if the Bills are going to have a long snapper or not. He's literally probably just going to be like, we're going to release you, but stick around because we're going to re-sign you. Andy Isabella, I thought that was interesting, and I hope that the Bills hold on to him. So, by tomorrow, I don't know if it's waivers or something like that. I don't think he can. I think he can sign with any team because he's been in the league for 4 years. So I think he'll be a practice squad player, and I think that that's what will happen. And then David Questenberry, I think it was in AJ Klein. Questenberry, I think he was just beat out, and I would not be too shocked if he signs with another team or he's on the Bills practice squad. And then lastly, AJ Klein. I think that AJ Klein is going to be I think he's going to be I think he's just it got to the point where like I heard that last preseason game against Chicago, he did not look good, and that's definitely kind of frustrating. So, you know, he had to go, and he's kind of old, and I don't think that the Bills really need an AJ Klein, and I thought that that was the right move to do for the Bills. I am super happy to see that DeMar Hamlin made the team. I'm glad to see that Justin Shorter's on the roster because I liked him. I liked his size, and I don't think there were really too many surprises, honestly. Well, Boogie Basham. I before I end this episode, Boogie Basham. I think that it had to deal with. I was a little disappointed that Basham had not shown out like we were hoping to. And he, over his 2 years, he had 4.5 sacks. And that's not what you'd want to see out of your second round pick. And the Bills are probably going to get back a mid to late round pick in return. And that's already a loss in of itself because they traded him over to the Giants. The Giants, they're becoming like the Bills 2.0, basically. Anybody who was on the Bills is on the Giants. So I find it kind of funny, but not, I was, I'm a little frustrated about it just based off the fact that, you know, you poured in a second round asset and you didn't use him probably the way that you should. And I think that it was between him and Epinesa and that we're going to get traded. And it turned out to be Boogie Basham. So it's unfortunate. And I still think that even with the loss of Basham, I think that the Bills' defensive line is still stacked. Though I think they'll be totally fine with what they got. Not too concerned. All right. Next up, week 1. we're on to games that matter, games that count. We're not at no more this preseason crap. Take the preseason pledge, basically. So that's what I'm excited. Now we can finally get to games that matter, and that's what's important. So that's going to do it for this episode of Depot's Den. I'm Evan DePasquale. You can follow me on Twitter at Evan Depot2. And next episode, we're going to be talking about, honoring the late Sabres broadcaster, Rick Jenneret, and I will give you my thoughts on what I felt like, how much he touched so many people, and also especially me, because I don't know where I would be without without Rick Jenneret. So we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to Depot's Den. I have been Evan DePasquale, and we will see you next time.